All right, how are we doing? Looks like we're doing okay. Okay, so I'll begin now. Hi, this is Attorney Joe Fieschko. Today's program is going to be about common tort claims that we see in society and what law is involved. The first topic is going to be about what we call slip and fall or trip and fall cases. Sometimes these cases seem trivial when you first fall down. A lot of my clients will fall down and they'll actually have a serious injury, but they're kind of embarrassed about it because it seems so stupid. But on the other hand, these can lead to serious injuries, and depending on a lot of situations, there may be a case there. So the biggest idea is, what does the duty of the landowner owe to the person on someone else's land? Obviously, if you trip at home, there's no kind of a case because you own the property. But these cases come up when you fall on someone else's property. So in Pennsylvania, we divide people into three categories who are visiting other people's property. The lowest level is the trespasser, and then there's the social guest, and then there's what we call the business invitee. And depending on your status, depends on the duty the landowner owes to you. So, beginning with the trespasser, if there's a trespasser who shouldn't be on the property, they are owed the lowest duty of care. For example, if someone's burglarizing an unoccupied home and runs out of the home with a television set and trips and falls on a defect in the premises, that's tough beans for him. Once in a while, you'll see some story about somebody like that who sues the homeowner, but at least in Pennsylvania, I can assure you that's not really possible. Basically, the only duty the homeowner owes to someone like that is they cannot intentionally harm them. So, for example, if someone has burglarized your home and they're running through your yard and they are of no danger to you, you can't shoot them. Okay, but anything short of that, the landlord or the trespasser is going to be out of luck. Now, to give you an idea of the difference here, and we're going to talk about what's called a business invitee soon. That's someone who's, for example, in a store, who's owed the highest duty of care. A few years ago, I had a client in Uniontown, and she worked for the state, very respectable person. And she always parked in the same parking lot. She paid to park her car there. So she does that, and it's a very snowy day. So she takes a shortcut through the parking lot next to her parking lot that she paid for, and it's snow covered, and she steps in a hole and breaks her leg. And it was a very serious injury. And she wanted to look into an action against the owner of that parking lot because it was, she showed it to me. It was a deep pothole. It shouldn't have been there. It was covered by snow, so she couldn't even see it. Well, the problem was she was a trespasser, and there was no case because there was no evidence that that landowner did anything to intentionally harm her. Take that for example, if that happened in the parking lot that she was paying for, where she was what's called a business invitee, be a great case. But that's why the status is very important. The middle view is the social guest. If you have someone over to your house for Thanksgiving or something like that, you owe them a duty to warn them of any danger that you know about. So if you have a swimming pool in back and they have a little kid and it's their first time there and it's the summertime, you're under a duty to say, hey, I have a swimming pool back there. Don't let your kid back there because they might drown. We don't see too many cases like that. There is one situation where we do see cases, and that is delivery people. If you're a FedEx delivery person or a mailman or something like that, you are on those premises for business purposes. You're serving a purpose. You're helping the person that owns the property. That makes you a business invitee. And let's talk about the duty that's now owed to a business invitee, because that's the highest duty. Usually we see that in stores. That's the most common case. And you say, well, why would a store have a higher duty than, for example, a homeowner? Well, the business person, the store, opens its doors every morning for one purpose, and that's to make money off you, off the customer. And that's fine. That's capitalism. It's the only system that works. But that is still why they are open. And they have a duty to make their premises reasonably safe. Now, what this means is they don't have an absolute duty to you to make it perfectly safe. They just have to be reasonable. So, for example, cases that come up a lot are if there is a structural problem. If one of their coolers is leaking and leading to a puddle, that tends to be a good case. Obviously, if there's a leak in the roof that's been there for a while, that can be a good case. If they have a parking lot that is a real mess with potholes and should be fixed, and by the way, if there's a case like that, or sometimes there's a change in elevation of sidewalks, it is important to get the pictures taken right away in a case like that, because a lot of times they will pave the parking lot, and you want to get that picture before there is that change. One other thing, nowadays grocery stores, to save money, stock while the store is open. They used to stock at night so they wouldn't have the pallets and the boxes around. Now they have them out, and people trip on those. Stores mop while they are open, and that's a good thing. I mean, otherwise the place would be filthy where there's high traffic. But that issue is always whether that one of those little cones is up, one of those little yellow cones, the slippery floor cone, which sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So if you have that situation, obviously you should report it if you fell down in there, even if you don't think you got hurt, because sometimes the next day you still have a problem and you go to the doctor and they say, well, you got a ruptured disc or you have a fracture that's not displaced. So report it and go to an attorney, frankly, because I can ask them to preserve the videotape. And I can tell you that years ago, when we didn't have videotape, there was always a question. I didn't know if the client was telling me the truth. I didn't know if it really happened, when it would be contested. Obviously, if there's videotape, you can easily see if the client was to blame or it didn't happen, or if it did happen and the store is to blame, well, you're all set. The damages, your pain and suffering, payment of the medical bills, payment of lost wages. I can tell you one thing, and this is kind of interesting. A lot of stores have what are called a premises policy. And that's a policy that pays for unpaid medical bills, even if they didn't do anything wrong. Years ago, I had an elderly woman who fainted, and she fell down in a grocery store, and it was a serious injury. I think she broke her arm or her shoulder, and at her age, she went into the nursing home and never came out again. So it was really a very bad situation. But the store didn't do anything wrong. She fell. So they had a $5,000 premises policy, and she had large medical bills. And after the deductibles and copayments and things like that, they gave her $5,000 to cover that stuff. I didn't charge her anything because there wasn't any kind of a fight to it. But a lot of stores have premises policies. So even if uh, there was no blame to the store, you can ask them if they have what's called a premises policy to cover your unpaid medical bills. Now, the last thing involving this kind of a case is cases where you slip and fall on ice and snow. And there are some doctrines in Pennsylvania law that can kind of explain to you whether you have a good case or not. The biggest one is what they call the hills and ridges doctrine. And this applies when there are generally slippery situations. For example, there's been a snowfall and the place is covered in snow. So obviously, if it's during the snowstorm, there's no case because what can a store do about that? If it's right after the snowstorm, there is no case. And I will now get into what hills and ridges means. As you know, in Western Pennsylvania, if you let the snow sit there for a few days, first of all, it gets ugly and disgusting looking, but it also forms hills and ridges, with the wind patterns and things like that. You find out that they have hills and ridges. If you fall down and it's been there so darn long that it's hills and ridges, you have a case. Also, certain municipalities have ordinances. Some of them say if you have a sidewalk in front of your business or your home, you have to shovel it within 24 hours of the snowfall. So if there's a violation of the ordinance, that's another good liability situation. I will distinguish it from patches of ice and snow. So if the place is shoveled, but you fall on a patch of ice, that's a different situation. So there may be a case there. Sometimes that patch is caused by something like a leaky gutter, which of course would often be negligence involved by the property owner. One final thing, and I think that's the second time I said one final thing, but we commonly get cases where people are renting apartments and they fall down. The landlord is only liable if you fall down in a common area. So, for example, if you're renting a house, there is no common area. So there's nothing there. If you rent an apartment, the hall would be a common area. And years ago, I had a case, again, in Uniontown where I had a poor fella that was renting a place above a pizza parlor. And the landlord, I never have seen this, but they had a washer and dryer in the upstairs, but they had it vent onto the stairs going down to the street. And it was idiotic because there was all that junk on the stairs all the time. So he slipped and fell and injured himself seriously. That was a good case. Now, some people are surprised. For example, I have had people renting apartments, and they'll go out on their private porch, that's not open to other tenants. And they'll lean against a railing, and the thing is corroded, and it breaks, and they fall off the porch and quite commonly injure themselves seriously. That's not a case. It's not in a common area. So that's how landlord-tenant stuff works. Let's go to the second topic, dog bites. There's a lot of dog bites. Seems like when I was growing up, my mother's best friend had a dog named Jim. It was an English setter. And every time you went there, Jim bit you. That would be the first thing that happened. You'd walk in the house, Jim would bite you, then you'd go on with your day. Um, but dog bites can be serious. I have had people. I had a poor guy that lost one of his fingers when a Saint Bernard bit it off. So it can, and sometimes a person gets mauled by a dog. So in the old days, there was a saying called "every dog gets the first bite." In other words, if the dog was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful dog until the day he bit you, there was no case because you had to prove that the dog had a tendency to bite people. That's out the window. There are two laws that come into play now. First, there's a leash law. If the dog is wandering around and there's no fence to restrain it, they're not on a leash and they bite you, that dog owner was in violation of the law because dogs either have to be on leashes or in fenced-in areas. Also, and this was the biggest thing, the Pennsylvania legislature passed the dangerous dog statute. And under the dangerous dog statute, if you have a serious injury, even if it's the first time that the dog ever bit anyone, then you have a claim. I can tell you that if this does occur, you should report the incident to the police. Even if it's a neighbor that you don't want to offend, you have to do that because the police in most areas will impound the dog and test it for rabies because that does exist in this day and age. And frankly, if it's been a peaceful dog and all of a sudden it's biting people, that's sometimes the reason. The biggest thing about dog bites is this. The person has to have homeowner's insurance. If they're renting, they don't have homeowner's insurance, and I've had this, many times over the years, where people just get mauled by pit bulls or other large dogs, and I find out there's no homeowner's insurance. Well, in the past, I have sued the individuals, but it's hopeless. You can't get anything. So that's the biggest thing. If the owner is a homeowner, they probably have homeowner's insurance. You're all set. If they're renting, unless they have renter's insurance, which isn't all that common, you're probably not going to recover anything. Okay, let's talk about the third topic, and that's what we call dram shop cases. Now, this is an ancient statute, and just for the fun of it, I'm going to read it to you so you can see by the wording that this thing's been around a long time. Okay, here goes. It is an offense for a licensee or any other person to sell, furnish, or give any liquor or malt or brewed beverages, or to permit any liquor or malt or brewed beverages to be sold, furnished, or given to any person visibly intoxicated, or to an insane person, or to a minor, or to a habitual drunkard, or person of known intemperate habits. So that sounds kind of like when we all lived in little villages and knew who the town drunk was. So there's really some of that stuff is out the window in this day and age. The two, insane person or habitual drunkards or in people with known intemperate habits, that doesn't really get around very much anymore. But the two that we see are bars, usually bars, serve somebody who's visibly intoxicated. And of course, if they serve a minor, then they're in real trouble on that one. So over the years, I've had these. If you're trying to prove visible intoxication, historically we needed somebody that was there, and that was pretty tough because usually the bartender is not going to say, "Oh yes, he looked visibly intoxicated, but I kept selling him liquor." It's like he's not going to say that. Oftentimes, a person will be alone. No stranger wants to come forward, and that would present a problem. And by the way, uh, when you are in a case, involved in a case like that, it is important to get a lawyer right away so I can start investigating and find out whether the person was visibly intoxicated or not. Now, the case law says if there's an extremely high alcohol level, like 0.26 or something like that, there is a presumption the person was visibly intoxicated when they were served. And I can sue the bar and get their receipts to find out how many drinks they served the person. So those cases can be developed. With a minor, that's almost a given. Society is really dead set against serving minors liquor for obvious reasons. It's a stupid idea. And if the person was a minor and goes out and has an accident after getting served in a bar, then the bar has a real problem. If you've noticed, bars take this stuff a lot more seriously than they did when we were younger. It was a lot more common to see kids drinking in bars or kids being able to buy alcohol from bars. Now it's a lot stricter, and so it should be. It's a big danger. Usually, we get involved in dram shop cases if there's a lack of insurance on the part of the driver. For example, if a drunk driver seriously injures my client and they have $1 million in insurance, well, actually, we'll probably join the bar anyway because it's another pocket, if I can be frank with you. But dram shop cases are alive and well. It is important to investigate those quickly because that kind of evidence can go away. Fourth topic, products liability. You are injured by a dangerous product. You don't have to prove the manufacturer was negligent, but you do have to prove that the product was unreasonably dangerous for its intended use. I think most people understand that the most important thing to do is to hang on to the object that injured you. If you throw away the object, normally there's no way I can prove that it was a defective object. And I'll give you an example. Some years ago, I had a client who used a pressure cooker that she bought from Home Shopping Network. And one day, and she had a previous one that she still used, but she bought a bigger one. And it was almost brand new, only a couple of times of use. And it blew up and seriously injured her. It was really just a horrible experience for her. She had a lot of burns on her body, and she did preserve the pressure cooker. And in a case like that, I have an engineer, and he's almost on retainer with me. I retain him so much. But he took the object to the lab, and he kept testing it to try to get it to repeat what had occurred. And again and again, he had trouble doing it. And he told me, I'm afraid I may not even be able to find out what the heck's wrong with this thing because it always works for me. Well, eventually what happened was the one time he tested it was there was a bobber, and when the pressure cooker is used properly, the bobber comes to the top of the liquid and kind of seals the pressure cooker so this doesn't occur. Well, apparently there was a space for the bobber to get caught and not be able to rise, not control the pressure, and that's why this thing blew up. So that was a successful case because we did find the defect. So if you are injured by a defective product, hang on to it. Um, Similar to this is food poisoning, and I'll get into that right now. Um, if you suspect you have eaten something from a restaurant or a grocery store and you got food poisoning, and around here it's usually salmonella, the most important thing is first report it to the Pennsylvania Department of Health because they do an investigation. And second, go to the hospital. Because what they do at the hospital is they will test your strain of salmonella, or they'll test for salmonella. If you don't have it, then you just got the flu or something. But they will test for the strain of salmonella, and the health department will test the food where you ate it for the strain of salmonella. And if that matches, then yes, you got the food poisoning from that particular source. So that's how the the food poisoning works. That's Salmonella is the only one that I've had in the past. I know there's a couple of other diseases, foodborne diseases, but that's the one that I've usually seen. The next topic, motorcycles. And this relates to automobile insurance. When we adopted no-fault automobile insurance years and years ago, they did not include motorcycles. And this is the reason. Back in the day, everybody had unlimited medical coverage. And the idea was if we include motorcycles in this no-fault system, it might bankrupt the system because a lot of times when people are injured in motorcycles, it can be catastrophic, quadriplegia, things like that. So it's not part of the no-fault system. So unlike in an auto accident where your medical bills are covered by your auto insurance, that is not the case for motorcycles. So how to protect yourself if you are a motorcycle rider? Two items. First, make sure that you have health insurance. Medicaid is available to a lot of people who might not otherwise be able to afford health insurance in Pennsylvania. So if you have health insurance through your employer, great. A lot of us do. If you don't, you might qualify for Medicaid. The other thing that's important is this. In your motorcycle policy and also in your automobile policies, you will have the choice to purchase uninsured and underinsured insurance. This is important for this reason. Let's say that you're riding a motorcycle and it's a hit and run. Well, who do you recover against? That's what uninsured motorist coverage is about. You can go back to your own policy on your motorcycle. You can go back to your own policy on your automobile and recover from your own companies what the bad guy should have paid because he took off and you'll never find him. So that protects you, especially on a motorcycle. Similar to that is what's called underinsured motorist coverage. You can also purchase that on your motorcycle and your automobile insurance. And that makes sure that, let's say that the person that injures you stops and they're sorry and all that stuff, and they have $15,000 in insurance, like Safe Auto or the Little General, I think it's called. Well, if you've got a serious injury, $15,000 really doesn't cover it. So again, the way to protect yourself while riding a motorcycle is to have health insurance and have either uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage on both your motorcycle and your automobile policies. Okay, so as usual, we're reaching the top of the hour. This has been Attorney Joe Fieschko. I only do a few things. I do personal injury, workers' comp, Social Security disability, bankruptcy, unpaid overtime cases, and I also will do wills and estates. And if you want to call me, my number is 1-800-242-2642. 2412. Thanks for listening. And if you're viewing me on YouTube, thanks for looking at me. Take care.
When is this? Is this
Oh, this is going to be this Monday.
or next week?
Well,
or whenever the next time.
Show is. Yeah,
Okay.
that's for the next show.
And what were you? What was the topic so I can write?